Today on Rappler, Senator Grace Poe denies rumors she's withdrawing from the presidential race to give way to another candidate. The Philippine Supreme Court allows detained former President Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo to vote on May 9th in Pampanga. And a massive wildfire in Canada forces thousands to flee. Hello and welcome. I'm Maria Ressa. We come to you live from the Rappler News Center. This is your top of the hour update in the run-up to the 2016 Philippine elections. Senator Grace Poe denies rumors she's withdrawing from the presidential race to give way to another candidate. Poe did not name anyone, but she seems to be referring to administration standard bearer Mar Rojas. Rojas is now statistically tied with her for second place after months of lagging in pre-election polls. Rojas earlier claimed the fight for the presidency will be between him and frontrunner Davao City Mayor Rudy Duterte. In her Twitter account, Poe says she will not withdraw in favor of a candidate who is, in her words, a failure and who will not win. Poe repeatedly criticized Rojas's inefficiency as former Transportation and Interior Secretary. The Philippine Supreme Court allows detained former President Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo to vote on May 9th in Pampanga. Arroyo's under hospital arrest over the alleged misuse of 366 million pesos while she was president. Arroyo is running for a third term as Pampanga representative. She'll be allowed to cast her ballot and return immediately, in the words of the court, without fanfare or caravan. Anti-graft court Sandigan Bayan also allows detained Senator Jinggoy Estrada to vote at San Juan City on Monday. His daughter, Janela Ejercito, is running for San Juan vice mayor, but the Sandigan Bayan says he can only vote for national candidates. Estrada is detained on plunder charges in connection with his Priority Development Fund, or what's commonly known as the pork barrel. In other news, a massive wildfire hits Alberta, Canada. Over 80,000 residents in Fort McMurray were forced to flee. No casualties have been reported. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says, quote, "It's a loss on a scale that's hard for many of us to imagine." Footage from the area shows trees on fire near highways crowded with bumper-to-bumper traffic. The monster blaze destroys about 10,000 hectares, including 2,000 homes. Follow Rappler.com for continuing updates. Here's a quick rundown of tonight's 7 p.m. news. Senator Sonny Trillanes files a plunder complaint against presidential frontrunner Rudy Duterte. Homegrown church Iglesia ni Cristo officially endorses Rudy Duterte and Bongbong Marcos. The Iglesia ni Cristo wages a silent war against former Justice Secretary Laila de Lima. Davao Mayor Rudy Duterte leads over his rivals in the latest standard poll. And in Cagayan de Oro City, it's a three-way fight for the mayoral race between Oscar Moreno, Rufus Rodriguez, and Vicente Emano. To watch more, click on the link on this video. And that is the top of the hour update. Now let's go back. We'll be talking about the massive leak of the Commission on Elections database and its implications on security, both ours and our nation's. Joining us now is Rene Haspe, the cybersecurity expert. Hello, Rene.
Hi.
Good to have you here.
Nice to meet you.
So let me ask you, how big is this? What does this mean exactly?
As what Comelec has claimed, it's around total users around 70 million, 55 million of which is the active users in the list, but the total number is around 70 M since they do not delete the users inside the database. They just flag it as not active. So, but the total number is around 70 M, 55 if you put it in the active voters list.
So, sorry again, 55 million
For
in
the
the active voters
list, but the actual list is around 70 M. Since
Okay.
these also are part of those who have not registered or deactivated, so that was still part of the leak.
And from what you've seen, is this the entire database? This is a Comelec database. Is that correct?
From the reports and it's the dumps in as claimed in some of the screenshots as shown by the so-called anonymous hackers.
Right.
It's really a dump. It's a physical in the database. It's the physical dump of an actual database. So yes.
there are two things. First,
Yes.
is there any risk for the Philippine elections on Monday?
The direct impact for the elections seems to be minimal, since they said that the election systems is different with the voters list.
Correct.
So I think which is true. The election system is very much different with the IT system, I assume, of COMELEC.
And what they'll use in the
yes,
system
yes.
itself. What about in terms of identity theft? Could somebody use this database to impersonate someone on
Okay.
Monday?
On using it on Monday, well, they will have to have a copy of that list.
Yes.
And then, well, it might not be efficient to get a copy of that, but I think in itself the effect would be felt long way after the elections, as I think it would be an ongoing problem on your privacy,
Of course.
because it's a data set. So
What does this mean for each of us? I'm a registered voter. I mean, what they have what details do they have of a person?
right now, I think it's your address, your gender,
Yeah.
and I assume when you fill up your voter's registration, you would give your father's name and mother's maiden name.
Right.
So that's
also publicly available.
publicly available. If you're an overseas voter, you will have to give your permanent address abroad, and also I believe your passport number.
Right. Which is also available.
which is a very critical piece of information.
Fingerprints.
Yes, there are fingerprint data in it, but you have to know the specific AFIS that the COMELEC used, because every AFIS has a different data point. So somebody who wants to use it needs to know what was the specific AFIS of the COMELEC used it. Yeah.
Okay. What's an AFIS?
The fingerprint system.
Okay.
So it's like when you watch CSI.
Right.
Because every fingerprint has a data point.
Okay.
So that is mapped. So depending upon the system that you use, those data points is very specific to a specific system. So you have to know what specific system COMELEC is using in order for you to use that.
It's like
data
decoding
points.
it,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Decoding
yes.
but the information is there. It just hasn't been decoded, I guess.
Yes,
is the
yeah,
right word,
yeah.
right? The fact that this database has been stolen and revealed to the public, what does that say about the security efforts of COMELEC?
It's pretty weak, if you ask me, but we cannot really blame.
And this is your job, right? I mean, your job
Yes,
is
yeah.
to actually deal with
to deal with
information
this.
security.
Yes.
Yeah.
But with my dealings with local clients, cybersecurity isn't that on the top of their minds right now. So probably that will change with this one. So because 55 million records isn't small, I believe this is the largest government data breach for the Philippines. I think it even surpasses that from the U.S. because in the U.S. the largest government, there are private breaches, but I believe in the U.S. government it's around 22 million. It's around 22 million records of security defense contractors.
Wow.
So that's the personnel themselves plus their immediate family, because you have security clearance, you have to declare who are your immediate connections, who are your family members.
When you say that the system is weak, I guess, as a security expert, when you looked at the way it was set up and the way it was taken, how would you describe this?
Because usually when you put up a system live in the internet, we have certain checkpoints that we follow. So first, you have to, we call it hardening your operating system.
Correct.
Next is you harden your networks.
Correct.
You harden your applications. Then lastly, you harden your database. So there are certain procedures that you follow before you put something live over the internet. There are best practices in order to do that. But unfortunately here in the Philippines, developers or their IT people doesn't really translate to security people. So that's the one lacking here in the Philippines right now.
When Anonymous, which was the first one, so there were two different groups that actually took this data and made it public, right?
Yes,
Anonymous took it first, and then LulzSec revealed
The dump
the
of the
dump,
data.
right? And then that then was taken by the same group and put in a way that is searchable.
Yes, but right now, because from what I'm seeing right now, Anonymous was the one who defaced it.
Okay.
Then probably he shared the info with the LALSEC guy, so
Yes.
he was able to crawl inside
Yes,
the
yes.
system of Comelec and then got the dump of the database. Then he published it publicly.
Yes.
Then right now, who created? We have your data. That's the question mark right now because we're not sure if is it the Anonymous guys or the LALSEC guys or is it another person who got hold of the same database then created a website so that he could just put it and then you could check it
Right,
manually.
right.
Yeah.
If you check them on social media, LulzSec actually was the one when they were shut down because the links were taken out,
Then,
right?
yes.
And then when they were shut down, they threatened.
Yes.
And then they came back. So let me ask you, initially, when the Anonymous attacked, we went to Comelec and asked them about this, and they dismissed it, said it wasn't an issue at all. Why do you think that would be the case? Did they not recognize how big the leak is, or?
Probably because when you do an incident response, because right now if this hacking happens, we are what in your call in cybersecurity the incident response space.
Right.
Probably they're still looking at it, they're still investigating, so they cannot do a definite answer of what if this data. They also claim that this might not be our data. Probably might be a copy or a different database. So they weren't claiming yet that it was their data.
But we're only journalists, and we could see that it
Exactly.
actually was. I mean, it wasn't that difficult to see
but
how large this breach was.
But for incident response, the official handler of the original data is the one who could really claim that yes, that is our data. So
How would you rate the Philippines in terms of the sophistication of our security online?
well, compared to the region, because I've talked to with some of my peers in the region, we're around 7 to 10 years behind.
7 to 10 years behind, oh my Lord.
Compared to Malaysia.
Compared to Malaysia.
Compared to Malaysia. So we're we're getting there.
Yeah.
We're trying to, but I think it's a lot of catching up.
And what does it mean for the Filipinos, for us, our data that is already out there? What does that mean for us, and what do we have to worry about in the future?
Because the data that you see inside the Comelec database is also the same data that you share in social media.
Yes.
The difference in that leak is if you give your own data, you could give 1 or 2 info of a person,
Right.
group of 10, 20. Here you have a list of 55 million data sets. So
Right.
in a searchable program.
Right.
So that's the difference. In the future, if you did this in the US, you could correlate it to your social security number. And then with the social security number, since the sophistication in the US of their financial institutions, you could create a credit card, you could open a bank account. So that's the dilemma right now, because right now you have PII of 55 million Filipinos outside the internet. So in the future, they're going to use that same data to harvest it for future uses, probably for finance or for health information. So that's the danger.
And how can we protect ourselves?
Protecting ourselves is you just have to be very vigilant. Just monitor your online transactions. If you've been using your passwords with the same info that is inside that database, probably it's a bad practice using your birth date as your password. Probably you have to change that, or using your mother's maiden name. So you have to adjust that. So for me personally, a security question of what's your mother's maiden name, I use Queen Elizabeth II, because it doesn't matter whether you use your true mother's maiden name. What is important that what you gave them is the same answer that you gave them when you registered. So that's some of the safe practices that we usually recommend.
So initially what we saw online after the extent of the breach became more public.
Public,
And
yes.
we did do the story, and then no one picked it up, right? Then afterwards, we saw it, people took it seriously after it hit international headlines. The
Yes.
question is anyone liable for this?
If we follow US law, the custodian of the data is usually the person who is liable for the breach, because he had to perform due diligence and due care. The problem is, if you mention due diligence, there should be a legal basis so that you could say that you did your due diligence.
Correct.
Unfortunately, I think right now there's no basis for due diligence. You have to ask a lawyer very specific for that. So I think probably data privacy will fall, but I think data privacy right now, the commission isn't formally formed yet.
Yes.
So there's no basis to say that they have been negligent or they didn't practice due care in protecting the COMELEC database. So we have to ask a lawyer, a very specific, that are they really liable for
The
for the-
spokesperson, the spokesperson of COMELEC actually said they would make themselves, they would
Yes.
take responsibility
Absolutely.
for it, right? Let's talk again about elections, I guess. Is there a worst case scenario for, what's your worst case scenario in terms of using this data for election fraud?
Usually because you have to assume the data. You have to assume the identity of the person, and then the
And
worst
then
case.
you go in, yeah.
Go in. But you also need to know the preference, the vote preference. Because in the US, they do that. Because I believe they have a record of the history of a voters, because they have to register as a Republican or so.
Right.
But so that same data set could be used, but right now you can't use it here locally to assume because you don't know the preference right now. Yeah.
Okay.
But
So
worst
you're
case is
saying-
you assume
yeah, they can't actually use it to
Yes,
take
yeah.
our identity and go to the polls and vote in our name.
For this election.
For this one.
Right. Because in the future elections, you could mine that data.
Correct.
Then you could start approaching. You have an address.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you could now go house to house and you could say, okay, who's your voting? So you get, well, marketers would love this kind of info.
Absolutely.
For
You're giving them ideas now. No, but certainly these are some of the issues. Let's talk about other things. You said that the Philippines, 7 through 9?
7 to 9 years behind.
7 to 9 years behind. The most common form of attacks is DDoS. Explain DDoS,
The denial of service.
Denial of service.
So it's like you have a phone.
Yeah.
Then everybody starts calling you simultaneously at the same time.
Right.
Since everybody's calling you at the same time, you can't answer all of them.
Right.
So you have to drop some. So that's the layman's.
So what we've seen Anonymous do is like they will attack. They did this to Visa, right?
Yes,
Several
yes.
years ago.
Yeah,
They
yes.
would overload it,
Yes.
ask for so much information that the entire site crashes.
It crashes, yeah.
Has that happened in the Philippines?
I haven't heard of a case that's happening because that's in security, that's a target to availability.
Yes.
Yeah, so you try to deny access to a certain website or certain. Here, there is no volume yet, or a website that has that high traffic. So though usually Anonymous does it for
It's like a campaign.
yeah, like a campaign, yeah.
Yeah.
But for cyber criminals, it's a ransom or it's a hostage that we will stop if you just pay us. So
I
I believe
see.
in the Philippines we are just seeing the first two, because in security we have 5 levels of agents.
Go ahead.
You have your hackers,
Yeah.
you have your hacktivists,
Yep.
you have cybercrime, your cybercrime,
Criminals who want money.
terrorists,
Terrorists.
and the last is nation states. so I assume you have U.S., China, Iran.
Right.
We're experiencing the first two, hackers and hacktivists. So
There were also reports, though, that China, for example, has actually infiltrated some of that there's some of the
Yeah,
most
yes,
Chinese
yes.
companies or Chinese agents have actually infiltrated government websites. Is this correct?
probably. But the difference here, because if you have a breach, you try to hold on to the breach as long as you can.
So that you can get the information
More
without...
is continuous. Probably if the Chinese, if it's true that the Chinese were able to get inside the COMELEC, they may be hating right now the Anonymous guys because of that. They had to close down the
Right.
website and they have to fix. So
Right,
so
right.
so. But for me, honestly, what I'm afraid of are the 3 ones, the last 3, because they're the quiet ones.
So the last 3 again, the last one were nation states,
Nation states, cyber criminals, or terrorist organizations. So,
terrorist organizations, industrial espionage. Where would you put that?
Industrial espionage usually falls under cybercrime.
Okay.
Usually, if you're a Russian hacker, it
Right.
falls under a industrial espionage. But if it's China, they do industrial espionage to get trade secrets and trade IPs. So for them, that's the reason why they do hacking. So it's different. It's a different agenda. One is for financial. One is for technological gain.
Do you remember several years back, former ambassador, the U.S. ambassador to the Philippines, John Negroponte, he came back and he said that the largest threat, the worst threat that the world is facing right now are cyber threats.
Yes.
And this was around the time that you had that kind of proxy war between.
Yes.
Do you remember? Was this Aramco or?
I believe there was an Aramco incident.
Yeah.
There's a specific name. I have to check, but I believe.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember it. Yeah.
There's because in the cybersecurity world, if there's a massive attack on a certain sector, we put a name.
Okay.
We put a name on it.
Yes.
I believe on the Aramco part, I believe it was Iranian. They suspect it was an Iranian.
Yes.
It was Iranian nation state sponsored. Of course, they wouldn't. I think they took down around 30,000 PCs or laptops. Everybody the next morning when they came in, every single
correct.
computer was down.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's an example of a nation state. A nation state attack. Yes.
We had anything like that in the Philippines?
None yet. Because let's be honest, Riza. I think our cyber infrastructure isn't that advanced yet.
Which means we're vulnerable.
Yes. Yeah.
Let me, I have so many more questions on this, and I just actually went back to the Aramco. The biggest hack in history is what they're calling it, right?
Yes. Yeah. I think. Yeah.
Let's talk about the elections, and so much of it is also going to be in cyberspace. In your assessment, how secure is this process?
I could only, because the system, as they claim, is different. The IT system of the Comelec website is different with the IT system that is set up by Smartmatic.
Right.
So it would only be up, I assume, during the transmission phase. Probably 2 to 6 hours, depending upon how quick all of the transmission comes in, and then it goes down.
Yeah, but
So-
more than that, because it'll go through the night if into the next day.
Yes,
depending on
yeah.
how-
But it
how-
will only be up
Okay,
upon the end of poll.
Right.
Of the
After the polls close?
Polls close.
going,
Yeah.
okay.
Unlike with a Comelec website, it's up 24 hours. Your threat would have all the time to discover, to do his reconnaissance,
Right.
to do a jump from one machine to another. But in the election system, it would be up and down in a quick span of time. That's
Days.
what they claim.
I would
That's
say
what they-
days,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
If
yeah.
not weeks,
Weeks, yeah.
depending on.
But then it will go down. And I assume because I think Karen Jimeno mentioned, we are using US grade encryption. He mentioned 256
Yep.
bit. That's the minimum standard for US defense grade security. That's 256. I assume that's AES. That's
Right.
one level of encryption that they use. So that's. But I can't really comment much because they didn't give any specifics. It would have
Yes.
been nice if they mentioned the specific technology, specific encryption that they use, so the security community could say, yes, you are using this level of safety or security that is defense grade or US. So that's.
Do we have the knowledge in this country? How is our IT sector and our cybersecurity? How are our cybersecurity professionals?
I belong to a global organization of cybersecurity professionals. We are around 100,000 globally. Unfortunately, in the Philippines, we only have 84 certified. Then around 40 of it is, half of it is probably working abroad. 40 is spread out on the various security officers of various banks and telcos around the country. But I've written an article here for Rappler. I said for 40 people to protect 60 million online Filipinos, that's a lot of that's a lot of work. And there are best practices out there, but unfortunately Filipinos they're not aware of that. So we need more security professionals. Yeah.
Why do you think that's the case? Is it because our education system, in terms of targeting this as a profession, do our young Filipinos don't see this as?
Probably one is because of the education. They're not seeing that there's a good side they've only seen the bad side doing there's a thrill in doing that, but they do not know that you could also be a good guy doing cybersecurity.
And yet, we actually have, I mean, I remember the love bug virus
Yes, yeah.
was a Filipino, right?
Yes,
We
yes.
have
We have talent,
Filipinos. We have talent, but it's raw.
They just don't realize that if they could have used that same skill to defend or use it for the good, there's you could do it. There's a career in doing cybersecurity. So I know I've worked with guys in the U.S. Then they admire Filipinos in the world of IT, and it's just that we do not know that we could do cybersecurity on the safe and the good side. So that's what is lacking.
So let's go back to May 9th, to the elections. I guess in terms of what you've seen, what you know about cybersecurity in the country, what vulnerabilities do we have? Do you see any?
If it's only up on this certain time, I believe it will just be an attack on availability. So at the minimum, probably on the similar to a DDoS attack, so that not all could transmit.
Yep.
So that's a possibility.
I see.
That's a possibility. But in order to hack it,
A
during
DDoS attack on the actual system would then prevent the
the
transmission
legitimate, yes, yeah,
to come through.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you need certain info
to be able to do
to
that.
do that.
Yeah.
And since it will only be up in a few hours, so they might not be able to see what. So but
How interesting.
yeah, but we don't know.
Yes.
Those bad guys also knows how to do it. So
Do you think that this was particularly targeted? I mean, was the Commission on Elections? It looked like, at least with the two groups, the first one looked at it as a
thrill.
fun.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
And then the second one, are elections targeted, or was this was the one that was the most?
I think
easiest?
the easiest, I assume, and it would give them the press mileage. It's high profile.
Which it did.
Yeah, it's high profile. So they didn't do it to manipulate the elections or what. But I think it's just for the reputation that they will go down in history. Those two names or the third name, once he is caught, their names will be forever put in the major breaches. So for them, that's the thrill. So that's. Yeah.
Wonderful. The last question has to do with us again. I guess what do we do? What can we do now that would help prevent any kind of attacks on us, any kind of personal attacks?
On the personal side,
Yes.
You just have to be aware of your social media accounts. Be wary of emails. It might sound similar to emails that you previously received, but it might not, because it's now becoming very specific. We call it phishing. Those same info could be used for phishing. Facebook accounts,
Yes.
the same Facebook account data that you create are the same info that was part of the COMELEC database. So there might be another Maria Riza creating a Facebook account with the same credentials with a different email address. That's a possibility, because
Incredible.
birth date and that's the same info.
Right.
Then he would start contacting friends that you have similar to yours. So you just have to be very wary of that.
Okay.
So-
And what could you do if you see that?
Well, you could report it to Facebook, and I think
Yeah,
you just
yeah.
have to prove this is my true identity and this account is a fake one.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thanks so much, Rene. We've been speaking to Rene Hasper, the cybersecurity expert. I'm Maria Ressa. Join us again in a few minutes for the top of the hour's headlines.